What's going on, folks? Welcome to another episode of the Satoshi Podcast. Today, I'm honored to be interviewing Brian, the creative director and co-founder of Superior. The game developer studio is Drifter Games, and the game can be purchased on Steam or played with NFTs in Gala Games. It is important to remember that the game is in early access. In today's video, we'll be discussing the past, present, and future of Superior, which I can honestly say, folks, is my favorite game at the moment. Please do not hesitate to leave any comments on this video, as well as making sure you like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I will leave all the links to find Superior at the top of the video description. This video is not sponsored and will be fully timestamped for your own viewing pleasure. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alrighty, Brian, thank you so much for jumping on the Satoshi Podcast today to talk about none other than Superior by Gala Games. But yeah, Brian, thank you for being here, mate, and chatting about Superior. It's an absolute pleasure, mate.
Yeah, super excited to come and talk about the game.
Amazing. So look, being the creative director, Brian, I just wanted to ask you sort of what's your main sort of input and roles when it does come to the development of Superior?
Well, the game is it's a small team that developed Superior. We're just over 30 people. So everybody at the team wears a lot of hats. As sort of the design director, I think my primary role is sort of setting the vision for the gameplay and and making sure that the narrative and the gameplay are all kind of like firing and fun. And then my co-founders, Kenneth Scott, he's the art director. He's sort of responsible for creating the world, making it beautiful, making it move, bringing it to life. And then my other co-founder, Ray Davis, is sort of wears two hats as the CEO and also the tech, the CTO, and he owns all kind of the engineering side of the game.
Oh, that's amazing, mate. So it kind of sounds like, you all, as you say, you all kind of wear the hats almost interchangeably at times, but you're kind of, I guess, managing a lot of these important roles and just making sure that everyone's jobs are kind of fitting well in with each other with the development.
Yeah, that's right. We've got an awesome
Yeah.
team of designers that I work with, and they are all sort of owning individual feature sets of the game, like combat, mobility, metagame, all of that stuff. And I'm just sort of wrangling cats, helping make sure that all of these things happen and are set up in a way that we're all happy with.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, that's really important, I think, to have that leadership established there. And, I guess, it shows in the product that you guys have put out so far. I can say for myself that it's just been such an enjoyable experience from start to finish. And so, it really shows, I think, you just have to have a team that's working well together in that sense. So speaking a little bit about the team and where you guys have come from a little bit now, Superior, this is not your first sort of venture as a game. Now, you did come from Web 2, particularly in the VR space from the research that I've done. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that and maybe how some of that was tied into perhaps some of the inspiration for the creation of Superior?
Yeah. So like you said, we started off as a VR game company. We formed ourselves in 2016. There was an opportunity. There's a lot of really interesting things happening in VR at that time, and we saw an opportunity to kind of get in early and start having fun making games on this new platform. And this sort of sets a pattern or a precedent for us, which is that we're always just really excited about trying new things and building on new platforms and seeing what those new platforms, how those new platforms are going to shape gameplay. And so yeah, we shipped we shipped a few games on on the VR platform. Gunheart was our first game. Then we did a sort of tie-in product with Ready Player One, where we made a sort of an arena shooter for Ready Player One, and then we helped port Robo Recall over to the Quest, and then the last VR game we made was Lives Beneath, which was a sort of it was a survival horror game, probably cast in the same mold as games like Resident Evil, and it was Yeah, it acted as like strong inspiration or a strong yes and to where we ultimately went to with Superior, because Lies Beneath was sort of set in this dark 1950s comic book horror comic book world where we stylized the rendering of everything to feel kind of almost black and white. And there were like comic panels in the environment and stuff, and it, I think we at Drifter, and I can speak for myself at least, I like love comic books. Comic books are like sort of, one of my favorite things in the world. And so building a horror game set in sort of a comic book universe was really, really fun. And we just weren't done yet. We wanted to kind of keep moving forward. And what better way to continue to explore comic books as a medium and how they can intersect with video games than to start exploring superheroes. And so for our next game, Superior, we wanted to go and move into the superhero space, but we wanted to do something different. And we knew we wanted to build on all of the sort of rendering techniques we developed with Lies Beneath. But since we were coming to a new we were moving off of VR, we had more rendering power. We could push the render distances and the sort of cell shading, comic booky stylized stuff much further. And we knew that we wanted to do something different. And that's how we kind of ultimately landed on the idea of, well, maybe you're not the superhero. Maybe you're hunting the superheroes, and the superheroes are evil mutants. And that was kind of, like how we got there.
Honestly, mate, that's just it's such a cool story. And one thing that I've always loved about Superior from the start is that, as soon as I started playing, I knew nothing about the game. I knew nothing about you guys, even until a little bit later, not long before we did this interview, in terms of knowing your history. I bought a Gala Games note early. I'd been on the ecosystem playing Town Star and a couple of the other earlier games that I had on there. And then I just saw this, Superior, what's this? It just popped up. And honestly, just from the moment I started playing, I just thought, this is fantastic, and I am, for those of you that don't know, I've played a lot of traditional games for a long time, since as long as I can remember. And I just thought, it was so great and refreshing to see, first of all, the art style, as you say, that comic book art style, just, I don't know, for me, fantastic, so clever, so unique. And I think, look, I can't say that I was aggressively sort of addicted to comics as such, but definitely into sort of your Marvels and DC Universe and things like that. So I can understand the appreciation that I suppose maybe comic book buffs of the early days or from different time frames would have towards comics. And I think, from what I can understand of that, I think you really do a good job of doing that justice in terms of, what you present in the game Superior. It just works really well. You don't have too much sort of nonsense between the frames. It feels like it's kind of it's just enough. And so I think it's absolutely brilliant. And just to follow on about Lies Beneath as well, I think that for sure, out of the previous games that you developed that I'd seen, that was one that really stood out to me. So I think it was really nice to see that progression actually go into Superior. So that was a really nice one too.
Yeah, I think, both of these games are kind of absolute labors of love. We've been really lucky being able to develop original IP for especially these last two games. I think when we finished Lives Beneath, like I said before, we really felt like we can do more with this. Like the comic book space is really exciting, and we also kind of we already knew this, but Kenneth, our art director, is a brilliant creature designer who has worked on essentially every great game that you can imagine, like Doom 3, Halo 4, like all these amazing games over the years were games that he art directed. And creature design is like one of his big superpowers. And so that was another kind of interesting experiment, because we had done all these creature designs that we were really, really happy with in Lies Beneath. And we're like, all right, well, we know we want to do superheroes, but we also want to have like creepy, weird monsters. And so the idea of evil mutant superheroes that you hunt kind of emerged also out of that, trying to align what we feel like we have the most passion and fun doing with the game that we want to build.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to follow on from that, no, I just loved it, honestly. It's kind of like you've done that whole role reversal, and it almost feels, at least for me, it's not so obvious that, okay, we got good guys and bad guys necessarily. It's just kind of an experience you go through, and it's just different. There's too many, it's not that same typical genre of a superhero comic book style, whether it's a game or a comic. It's just totally flipped on its head. So that's one thing really, is to be different. But then it's another thing to also create what's clearly, as you say, like a passion project, right? So I think the merging of those two together is what is really special about the product, Superior at the moment anyway. So yeah, kudos for you for doing that. All right, Brian, so the next thing I wanted to chat to you guys is a little bit about Gala Games and why you kind of chose to actually use them to, I suppose, deliver your game Superior to their audience. And one thing I will say is, one thing I do like about Gala Games, sort of with my journey with them, is the fact that they're focused on getting the right people in from, it doesn't have to all be from their own sort of development team. For example, you've got Drifter Games coming in. You've got other great, game developer studios as well, building on their platform. I think they've got in total about 28 games currently in development, which seems kind of mad, but people tend to forget that, well, Gala Games are not doing it all. They're outsourcing completely, and Superior is one of those early games. And I think that's really cool, because for me, in the blockchain gaming space, unfortunately, it's really early, and right now there's a lot of garbage. There are a lot of games that are just in it more for the money and not for the game. But I think one of the biggest ethoses that Gala Games brings forward is that they want to focus on building games that are just fun, no different to what a good Web 2 game would be. Okay, let's not worry about the monetary income. Okay, that's just like a little addition we can bring on in the form of NFTs and blockchain technology on the side. So that's something really refreshing that I think Gala Games do different. So does that kind of play into some of the reasons why you chose to, I guess, launch on Gala Games in terms of the blockchain side of things for Superior?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Gala has been an awesome partner, because we were interested in, and we were moving into exploring the possibilities of how blockchain and Superior might intersect long before we ever started talking to Gala. But what we knew as we sort of got into it was that we needed to find a partner who possess that domain expertise that we could kind of like lean on to really nail it. We didn't want to like just tack on the blockchain stuff. We wanted it to be integrated. We wanted it to feel cohesive. And when we started our early conversations with Gala, one of the things that really stood out was that they were really excited about the vision for the game and the world that we wanted to create. They had lots of ideas on how something like that could intersect with the blockchain that kind of aligned with our own vision of the blockchain. We wanted, we're really interested in empowering people with ownership, and stuff like that. And I think those goals sort of aligned with Gala's goals at the time. I think Gala, to your point, they're doing a lot of things. They're trying a lot of stuff, and they're giving a lot of autonomy and ownership to the creatives, so that we can go in and create high quality products. And they're also open to exploring games that operate on different business models, right? I think it's very easy to sort of start with to approach blockchain gaming from a sort of mobile free-to-play business model, and that's absolutely a totally valid way to do it. That's not the type of game that we're making with Superior, and so it was really important to us that we find a partner that was interested in making a bigger, more premium style game like Superior on the blockchain. And Gala's been an awesome partner in helping us sort of develop that vision and put together a blockchain integration plan that should be really, really cool.
Yeah, no, thanks for that input, Brian. And I do a lot of content about Gala Games, guys. I'm not sponsored by Gala Games, as most of you will already know, because I say it every video. But again, it's just plain and simple. I choose to create content about Gala Games because they just bring on some quality games and developer teams, right? So, and I think from the way I see it as a content creator, I think, yeah, as I mentioned before, it's so early in terms of blockchain gaming, this technology. It comes under, the flashlights a lot, the scrutiny a lot. But in my mind, in my opinion, in terms of, the platform that you've chosen to, work with, Gala Games, I can't think of a platform that really would be better. In terms of what's maybe in the future, I don't know. But in terms of what's out there now, because you're building the game now, and it's, the playable version is already very much playable. So, I think it's definitely a really good decision. So now I did want to go on to this next question, but before I just want to jump back a fraction and just dive into the team a little bit more. So, you've actually got some inspiration, and talk a little bit about the inspiration, just a little bit of the inspiration from the Gears of War games that originally released on Xbox. Because I think that, Gears of War was, a huge milestone for Web2 gamers in terms of, I guess, just kind of a submersive experience, if you like. At least it was for me. I think I was probably like maybe 16, 17 years old at the time. And I just remember playing it going, wow, like this hits different,
Oh,
And
yeah.
I know, yeah. So I don't know if it's one or two developers that had,
Well,
yeah.
so one of my co-founders,
Yeah.
Ray,
Gotcha.
was sort of the lead engineer on Gears of War and Gears of War 2.
Nice.
So he was over at Epic developing that game from the very beginning. And when we started on Superior, we were definitely like looking at the pretty significant catalog of games that sort of we have all built as a leadership group and as a team in general, and seeing were there things that we wanted to draw on in terms of that sort of history. And so, yeah, I mean, told you about how Kenneth's history doing epic creature design for id Software and 343 and all these places really shaped the world that we created. I think a lot of the ways in which you control the character and move through the space, and a lot of the ways in which the gunplay plays out in Superior is heavily drawn from Ray's experience, developing Gears of War from the ground up. We have a sort of a different type of dynamic cover system that sort of just automatically happens contextually based on getting close to cover objects. But a lot of the ways in which that system work are heavily inspired by the work that Ray did on the original Gears of War series.
Yeah, no, thanks for filling us in on that. And yeah, I can totally agree. And I think I didn't read about that until after playing the game. But just with that early stage sort of ducking behind the terrain mechanic, as you mentioned, I just thought I've felt this before. Like this is something
Well,
I've felt before, and it's good.
One of the things we wanted to do with the game was we have this notion in the game design that you start in the gutter. You're a regular baseline human fighting superheroes, and you got to like take cover and hunker down and use guns and stuff. And by the end of a run, you want to claw your way from gutter to godhood. You want to have stolen so many superheroes powers that by the time you square off against the final enemy, you're facing an enemy that's like 12 stories tall, and you're flying and spitting fire from your mouth or whatever, right? Like you're skating around the environment like Frozone, and transforming into a motorcycle. And so, yeah, the role of cover and gunplay kind of like start off as like a core pillar of the gameplay, but one of the challenges of the game is slowly evolving your play style as your character becomes a superhero themselves. So it's kind of a different rhythm to sort of session design than anything that we've ever done anyway.
100%. And I think, yeah, what you're saying there definitely makes sense for me as, being someone who plays the game a lot. I stream the game, and I'm going to continue to create content for Superior on my channel as it develops. It's just so exciting. But you're so right. And actually, I've never thought about it in that way, but it does start like that. You sort of, yeah, you pretty much do start with nothing. Well, you can choose one power in the beginning. And I love it how, I don't know if it's going to stay this way, but I love it how it's almost it is kind of randomly generated to a sense, isn't it? Because it is different pretty much every time you go in terms of the first ability you can choose and then consecutive abilities, or is there something that determines that, or
it's all, I mean, it's mostly random. There's some light determinism in there. Like for instance, currently when you walk up to the first time you put in a juice tank, it will always give you sort of verb powers: jump, melee, or dash. But there are 5 different power families. So 3 slots, 15 potential things that could show up in that. That means that like there's quite a few different starting configurations that we can kind of like put you off on your first step, and then from there we basically feed you. The RNG is shaped by the choices you've already made. So there are some slots in that power kiosk that are 100% random, and then there are other slots that say, oh well, he's already got fire and ice power, so let's make sure this slot is reserved for more fire and ice augments. And then other slots will just say, give them anything random. And that kind of mixture, I mean, obviously you want, in a good roguelike, you want every single run to feel different. And we really feel like the key to creating that sort of diversity of play really falls on the various different builds that you can create for the character. In fact, that's one of the things I think that we're really focusing on now, is like really pushing that forward and making that even bigger part of the game in terms of making these choices feel really fun. And I don't know if I want to say difficult, maybe difficult, like, if I take this, then I'm closing off an avenue over here, or I'm, or I'm pursuing a different strategy, and really make each one of those choices that you make through the run really count. And then have those choices also affect all future sort of RNG, the random rolls for what you get going forward.
Yeah, and look, you're right. That's what it does so well. It is very fun going through and picking. And I've done a fair few runs, on my own and in teams and things. And I can't say I've really ever, been sort of gotten to the end and thought, oh, that was quite disappointing. It's always just been kind of a different experience. I think one of the sort of the last times I played, I kind of thought, oh, do you know what? I always take ice. I always try and go full ice build because that's just what I like. And then I think I got presented with the option of Xeno, which kind of leads me on to what I want to chat a little bit about next, the Xeno class abilities. And I remember using the motorcycle of the Xeno the first time, and I didn't give it time, as in I didn't know how to use it, and I was terrible. I was like, this is awful. I don't want to go back to this. It looks cool, but I can't do this. So then I was presented, I thought, okay, I can go with what I always go with and just pick ice, or maybe I've got this opportunity, I can try the Xeno bike. I thought, you know what, like, why wouldn't I just try and learn something new? Obviously, these guys have put it there for a reason. It's not like it's just, if you can learn how to play it well, you're going to be able to play it just as well, maybe even better than the ice abilities. And then I went ahead and now I haven't really turned back. I think Xeno class is probably my favorite in all respects of all the abilities. So, talk to me a little bit about that Xeno class, because again, that's just the one, and there are more, I think I don't know, I can't remember what you call the other one, but where you get all like the force fields. I'm not sure what that class is called.
Force.
That's just called. That's incredible as well. I think one of the last recent runs I played, you kind of get the basic force field, and then you got like the mega force field, and it's just massive. It just sits there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I love that. It's so cool.
We try to roll out the powers to the player in such a way so that you are kind of getting, you start off with fire and ice as your first two starter powers. Yeah. And the reason for that is because fire and ice is super easy to understand. Like fire burns things over time, and ice slows things down. And we kind of do a both sides, because ice slows things down, but then like all the ice sheets speed you up, so it makes everything feel even slower. It's a really, really easy to understand core concept to, like, all right, yeah, I'm like going in, I'm trying to push damage out into the environment and make it as far as I can. Then when we introduce Xeno and Force, like each one of these powers basically ask you to completely rethink and recontextualize how you play. So Xeno rewards you, like all the Xeno powers do lots of damage, but they also reward you for getting Xeno kills, which then, increases the size of your little swarm. And if you increase the size of your little Xeno buddy swarm, you become just generally more effective. It's sort of a force multiplier, but that's like sort of a weird way of thinking about it. And then it also, because it has its own branch that talks to your health pool rather than your armor pool, and even lets you like ditch your armor pool completely. It means that you're like if you're going the Xeno path, you're potentially, there's a couple different avenues. You can just focus on direct damage. You can focus on building up your Xeno swarm, or you can focus on sort of a vampire approach to the build where you're really focusing on your health bar, or you can mix and match those three different avenues. But the thing about it is like none of that is obvious when you first get Xeno, right? Like the first thing that you get when you get Xeno is like, oh, it's cool to turn into a motorcycle. But it can be hard to then. It is intentionally more difficult to master. It's got more nuance to it. And then I think Force does that in even kind of a deeper way, because the Force powers don't speed you up. Most of the powers are kind of allowing you to like rip across the environment and get up really high. And Force says, oh, no, we're going to like kind of lock you down. You're going to be able to create hard points. You're going to be able to get up in the air and stay up in the air. You're going to be able to absorb lots of damage and get over armor. And then of course the force blades give you a sort of a way to flip the whole thing on its head and sort of say, now I want to make all of my force fields more tough because that makes my force blades more potent. So again, it's another power set that has sort of one value proposition when you get it that is totally different from the other power sets. And then once you start messing with force blades, you realize that everything about the power set can actually be recontextualized in a different direction. And so, yeah, both of those power families are definitely like the hardest to kind of get the hang of. And it's been really, really fun to see players who kind of stick with it and keep playing, really discovering that those two power sets are actually very, very potent and powerful, and can end up being essential to players who are kind of playing at the highest level, in terms of deciding to go that direction.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm just a guinea pig in this experiment. I felt that straight away. Like I said, that initial frustration of stuff this bike. Like, I can't be bothered. It's too hard to control. I got to worry about like turning it on and off and everything. But yeah, it does feel like that. And I feel like even playing at the moment, it just, I always feel like, there's just so much room to get better within those sort of power sets, right? And I can really feel that definitely with the Force and the Xeno, exactly how you're saying, as someone who has played it. And I mean, would it be fair to say, like, are you aiming in terms of when you have like your co-op gameplay versus your solo gameplay? Would it be fair to say, whether it's now or even going into the future of the development of Superior, that there's going to be a lot of strategy, potential for strategy among the powers between players and different player types?
For sure. I mean, I think that we want to create as many opportunities as possible to make the co-op feel better. And like, even in the game, like, I think every aspect of the game tries to have elements that talk to the multiplayer opportunities, whether it's like the Xeno powers have a category of powers that drop like sort of Xeno healing sacks that boost health and damage, and any of your teammates can pick those things up. Or the force powers in particular can there are augments in there that can give other nearby teammates over armor and stuff like that. And then obviously there are right now what we're looking at is duo powers that talk specifically to different families. So you could have something that says something like, if you burn a player who is frozen, then they explode. And that could be like on the solo build, you could just create that scenario and get that ability by getting both fire and ice powers. Or in a multiplayer scenario, you could have an all fire player and all ice player, and have one person get that ability and then be working together to, like, I'm going to tee it up with frozen and then you set fire to them and create these explosions. So we definitely want to like continue to explore and expand that space in terms of co-op play, for sure.
I think that's really, intelligent when it comes to, I guess, the sustainability of that play base of the game, because, you know how it is when games come out, particularly I feel like if they're not PvP, you might get a game come out, kind of has a peak up to maybe, who knows, a 6-month period, a year period, even on a good game, right? But more often than not, with majority of games, they do die out, and the player base stops growing, and that's just how it is. But there are some games that sort of, I think, have more of a longer term mindset, and I think for me, hearing that, it does leave there a lot of room just for continual exploration, learning, expansion on the game, which I think theoretically should, keep people, first of all, people who have come early just to continue playing, who are into that roguelike genre, and for new people that are coming on, just to be like, wow, what the there's just so much you can learn. So you're not, I guess, generally speaking, it's less likely that people are going to come in and say, do you know what, I'm kind of bored of this now. Well, no, because there's just so much you can do, and every run can just be so different. So I think that's a really smart way. Is that something you've thought about in terms of the longevity and wanting to be a sustainable game for, well, as long as possible, I would suppose, as opposed to maybe
hopefully,
1-2
yeah.
years? Yeah.
I mean, hopefully the game feels like an onion. I mean, and the other thing is just like, for anyone who's been playing the game with us from the beginning or in November when we went to early access, we put out some pretty major updates already, kind of, and we've been sort of on a monthly cadence of doing some pretty significant expansions of the game. In December, we came out with the growth update, which was our biggest update ever. We added a whole new sort of timeline, 2 new bosses, and a bunch of content. Coming up pretty soon, we've got an update that's going to focus on expanding. It's going to introduce a whole new type of weapon to the mix, and that will come with its own set of augments and abilities. And then like going forward, we want to be on like kind of this track where it's like every time you kind of get comfortable with the game, we want to expand the surface area. We want to expand the possible things that can occur in the game, so that even if you go and play the same mission you played 100 times before, by injecting new bosses, new powers, new abilities, new weapons, you're going to be recontextualizing the game and create new challenges for you to kind of go and overcome. And then, of course, like to your point, I think the other thing that hopefully makes this game feel evergreen is that once you've sort of consumed and really explored all the content in a sort of traditional co-op or solo play sort of state, you can start collecting those challenge keys and go and test your mettle against other players in the competitive leaderboards, where not only do they have sort of special loot tables that give you special loot drops based on just being able to grind in those challenge key missions, but then also if you can kind of perform at the highest level in those challenge keys, you're going to get unique items that no other player will ever have access to, which is pretty cool.
That is actually really cool. And I knew about the challenge run and the keys and everything, and I'd played that a few times, but is that going to be in the form of just your basic items, or could that be NFTs down the line as well? Possibly,
yeah, absolutely.
Or?
That's the plan. Is that the challenge? Like when I kind of look at it, I kind of view the challenge runs as a really interesting model for a kind of delivery method for or an earning method for getting NFTs in general is like through some mechanism that we can't go into detail with. I think that that would be a really, really like cool way to basically be able to earn NFTs. Is like you go into the challenge runs and everything you earn in there, in one way or another leads to an NFT that you can actually own. That would be very cool.
Look, I couldn't agree more. I think that would be, in theory, absolutely fantastic. And, just obviously, incentivize players to, play more, but it's not that they need that, not that they need to be incentivized, because again, that's what I love about the game so much. It's really, to be honest, it's maybe one of 2, maybe 3 blockchain games I've played where, from the moment I turn on and start playing, I'm not thinking, when can I earn from this? Or how much am I going to be able to earn from this? Which previous blockchain games I've played, that's what has come to mind, and that's another reason why I like it so much. You kind of forget that it's on blockchain because it's not really the main part. It's just it's just like a bit of added tech on the side, right? And I guess that kind of leads me into I guess one of the biggest issues that I hear typically from maybe Web2 gamers that don't have a lot of experience in blockchain gaming is once they hear the word NFT or blockchain, a lot of them, without even giving the game a go, will just critique it very harshly without even playing the game. Or there was an interesting comment that I saw that I read, just one particular comment on the Steam reviews for Superior, and it said, absolutely fantastic game, had a great time, something along those lines, but it's an NFT game. So they gave it a slightly less, they gave it a bit of a low rating. And I thought, well, is that the only thing you're going to, just because it's an NFT game? But your experience from what they had described wasn't hindered because it was an NFT game. It sounded like you still had a lot of fun. So I guess, in terms of the version that you do have on Steam, which is Web 2 versus the Gala Games version, is there going to be much difference? Are the people that that don't want to invest in the NFTs right away, are they going to sort of have lesser of an experience on the Web 2?
So it is a bummer, right? It was never we're attracted to blockchain as a platform because it opens up sort of interesting features that we were interested in and curious about. We wanted to experiment with. But that's the same in my mind. It's the same as any other sort of platform play.
100%.
Steam has got actually a lot of cool, unique features as a platform itself, in terms of Steam Deck and Steam achievements and all these things. These are all really cool, features that other platforms don't have. And so, no, yeah, I mean, it is a bummer to see Steam player, when a player comes in and really enjoys it, but then decides to downvote us because they don't like the fact that we have an NFT version of the game. On the other hand, I guess the way I kind of view it is like, what's the thing that's most important to me is create I'm glad that they had fun. Like, if they thought the game was great. I actually, the way I've been thinking about it lately is that, like, we want to make sure that we're making each instance of the game, regardless of the platform it's on, we want to make sort of like the best version of that game on that platform. And so I think that's the best we can do here is just really focus on making a great game and allow people to speak their minds and be receptive. I want to make the best game and the game that everybody wants, and I'm going to do everything in my power to do that. So yeah.
And 100%, I think it's clear for people watching out there, they're just, and it's through maybe a lack of clarity, a combination of maybe a lack of clarity from certain parties, but also a lack of, I guess, research from, community members who just, Pete, you know how it is, and it's never going to change. People are always going to be quick to judge, as you say. They learn it's an NFT game and they just judge, and we can't change that. There's always going to be people like that. But as you say, you are just focused on the game development side of things. You're experimenting with blockchain technology because you think it's, and I agree with you. I think it definitely holds some real value in terms of, player asset ownership, versus maybe a big conglomerate taking, all the control. And, I think it's, what I find a little bit sort of hypocritical is that I'm pretty sure that a lot of these people, maybe, if there's Web2 gamers watching this interview right now, that, you've paid for skins in game, you've paid for games, this is not just some kind of new model, right? There are a plethora of games where people pay hundreds, maybe even thousands for in-game items already. You don't own those items. You cannot take those items onto a secondary market and sell them if you wish. Okay, it's not to say that the blockchain tech and the NFTs are perfect. It's very early on, but having an experience with Superior, if you do go on one of these challenge runs, say, that Brian was talking about, and you happen to score, I don't know, maybe hypothetically, of course, a really rare sword or something like that, then you could theoretically take this on to a secondary market on that blockchain, and someone might be prepared to pay you a premium for that if that's what you chose to do, because you own that item. And I think that for me is like the good side, right? The good side of what blockchain can give to a game like Superior. Unfortunately, all of this negativity does come from, I think, primarily the bad actors, the people that are trying to come in and either scam or just trying to come in and make some money. It might not necessarily be a scam, but it's a low quality game. It's very obvious to, the Web2 gamer who has a lot of experience. And unfortunately, that's just where we are. And that's just, I guess, the price, you pay for being early to this space. But as you just mentioned there, I think, you're continuing to develop with your team just a quality game across both platforms. It shouldn't matter whether it's blockchain or Web2, and just continuing to, improve the game, etc., for the community. I think eventually, especially probably once we hit a bit more of a bull market, for the people specifically in cryptocurrency, I personally think it's going to draw in a lot more people, and hopefully, I guess, hopefully a lot more people will, it'll be less about, it was fun because it was an NFT game, and more about, this is just a fun game. I actually ended up maybe buying some NFTs and having a bit of fun and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I hope so. I think, like I said, I find it to be the most constructive to, focus on the positive. And, what I see is that there are a lot of players playing Superior on both platforms and really enjoying it. The people who are enjoying it have been wonderful to, wonderful additions to the community. We're all trying to make the game better. And ultimately, I think that's what gaming culture, where gaming culture is at its best. And, that's where I want to place my focus. And there's always going to be a little negativity, and that's okay too. Like it's all part of our mosaic of a gaming culture that we have.
Absolutely, yeah. You couldn't be more, you couldn't be more right about that. So a couple little points just to kind of sort of finish the interview off that I wanted to cover. Now, obviously, yeah, we've just hit 2023. You got a lot of exciting updates which you've just done quite recently. One that I noticed, I haven't played in maybe a couple of weeks or something, but last time I did play, something that I did notice, I'm not sure if this was just me because I didn't look into it, but I noticed that there was quite a difference to the sound effects in the game. I just
So
it
our audio
was so
director
good. Yeah,
Ken Cato is amazing, and
yeah.
he actually comes from Halo originally, and
Nice.
and then before that Forza, and he was at Microsoft for a long time making a lot of amazing games.
Nice.
He's been with us since the beginning, and he's really put his heart and soul into this game, and I think it shows. And the constant iteration, the constant attention to making the guns sound just right. He composed, I think, either all or almost all of the music himself. And
Really?
music in the game is beautiful. Yeah, no, I mean it is a real pleasure to work with our audio team. And see them continue to innovate. And yeah, I mean, I think essentially every single update there have been improvements to the audio. The audio is an ongoing labor of love for us, absolutely. And it makes me really happy that that you noticed and that people are enjoying it.
No, 100%. Like I was just playing and it was more than noticed. I was like, damn, like this sounds, it was not just the weapons, but also just the way that the monsters and the bad guys were sounding, the sounds. It really, it really made it feel a lot more, even more immersive than what it had felt on previous runs. So, I thought that was really good. I think it's probably something that does get overlooked by a lot of people is the sound that goes into it. But you can argue that it's just as important as the visuals.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Yeah, it's really good making them meet together. And for you to say, because I didn't know about the music and the sound, whether that was original, but if you guys have produced that as well, I mean, that's some serious stuff. Like, so it just hits different. I don't know how else I can explain it.
Yeah, we've gone through a lot of different approaches with it, and I really like where we sort of landed, where it's got a little bit of sort of classic superhero nostalgia that almost sounds like it could have come from like The Incredibles or something.
Oh,
but then it's mixed with this sort of like techno like electronic vibe that disrupts and corrupts it in a certain way, which I think is intended to sort of mirror the fiction of the world, where you've got these sort of classic cornball superheroes in tights that have like turned into monsters and you're fighting with sci-fi weapons. We wanted the music to do the same thing, and I think Ken really nailed it on that.
Honestly, it's just so good. I mean, I could talk about it for ages, but just before we kind of wrap up, a couple more little points I really wanted to touch on. One that I literally just remembered. Now, in terms of, in my mind, in any good game or most good games, they come with a bit of a story, a bit of lore in terms of, the story behind the game. Now, is that something that you're thinking about in terms of developing a story, just the lore specifically? Are we going to hear stories, for example, about the current sort of, well, is heroes the right word? Well, let's just say characters. I'm not sure how you define the different characters of the game. Like, is there going to be expansion into the lore of those characters, the stories? Because obviously, and I have to say this as well, I think in terms of the just the gameplay, what's it called? Like the trailer that you've got. There's one, like your main trailer that you've got. I'm pretty sure it comes on just automatically when you go in and play the game now, and you go through and the three come together, and that's just awesome. That is just such an awesome production. That is just incredible. I mean, and it just, the gameplay is not really any different to that as well. Yeah. So it kind of, and then you bring in the comic book sort of, I don't know if you call them like prints straight away, right? And you see the transformation from good superhero to bad superhero, and then these characters come steal the powers. Is that kind of like just the start of maybe well, what I hope would be maybe some lore to come and expand on down the line?
Yeah, so we've got some plans on how we're going to expand the lore of the game. I think one of the things that we really want to improve is that sort of sense of progression, like a sense that like, okay, these are the heroes that I've killed so far. These are the supervillains that I've still got to hunt down. We want to do a little bit more of like hinting at their past, and you know, I mean, I think the other opportunity or place that we want to continue to expand the lore is sort of the way in which the characters interact with each other in via their banter and the kind of the way that they you know, the dialogue, the costumes that they choose, things like that. Further down the line, you know, I think we see a lot of opportunities for you know, expanding the lore in other mediums as the opportunities emerge. So I mean, absolutely, we would love to do more of that. Like if there was a superior comic book someday, that would be a dream come true. So like you know,
Nice.
nothing to announce there, but I think that would be
Sure.
the sort of thing that we would love to do if we can make it happen.
I mean, it's not like, yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen one day when the time is right. You know, when
That's
the
right.
time is right, I'm sure it only makes sense in my mind. So, really, the last thing I want to sort of leave us with here, Brian, is in terms, yeah, as I said, 2023, sort of new year. I mean, you know, elaborate maybe a little bit if you can on sort of any sort of cool milestones we can maybe expect. And one other tiny little question I just wanted to fit in as well. Growth. I haven't had a chance to play against Growth myself yet, but again, without doing any sort of further research, it almost feels like he is like the bad, you know, sort of like the bad guy boss of bosses. Is that right to assume that, or is that just like
Yeah, yeah,
one?
yeah.
Yeah,
So he is like he is the hardest guy to get to. So
gotcha.
you have to travel. You have to kind of go to an alternate Earth and then find another passage to another alternate Earth even to get to him.
Yeah.
And then like he is, you know, he's sort of our world's Ant-Man, you know, where like he had, you know, before he was a superhero or when he was a superhero, the ability to kind of grow himself large. But then when he became corrupted, like just parts of him started growing at different rates, and you know his
Brilliant.
brain didn't grow at all. So he's like, you know, it's like getting squished by the muscle, and now he's just like, you know, 20 stories tall. But yeah, I think the growth is like definitely one of our, you know, world-ending threats for sure.
100%. Awesome. That's so good to see. I can't wait till I get a chance to play against him. And again, just yeah, any other sort of major milestones or anything that you want to leave, just to summarize the video. Any closing thoughts, things to look forward to in
Yeah,
2023.
I mean, we've got so many things planned on our roadmap for Superior coming up. You know, we want to make, you know, significant improvements to the melee system. We've got new bosses, new environments that are all kind of coming down the pipe over the course of 2023. In the short term, like I said before, we are we're planning to do a patch relatively soon that's going to be rolling out a whole new weapon type, deployers, which are
Nice.
going to be like you know, which are kind of like turrets that you can plop on the ground. And there will be a sort of suite of those plus abilities that allow you to augment the deployer. So that will open up a whole new sort of avenue for builds and strategies that you can use. And then yeah, I mean, we also on our roadmap have like completely new characters to play as, you know, so like the roster is going to be expanding fairly soon, and those and that roster will bring with it whole new skill trees. I guess the other thing I'll throw out there is that with one of our most recent updates, we came out with the infamy system, which I think has which is a pretty cool system in general. It allows you to kind of like improve your character, like raise the level cap of your character. And on the Web3 side, the intent is that when you increase the infamy of your character, that infamy improvement is permanently embedded in the NFT, so that if you were to, you know, trade the NFT later, it will take with it all the levels that you gained with it, which is pretty cool.
That's very cool. Kind of like I don't know if you call it like a dynamic NFT or something, but yeah, that makes sense. That's really really awesome. No, well, look, Brian. Look, all I can say is, you know, thank you again so much for coming on and doing this stream on the Satoshi podcast. And you know, it's just yeah. Again, guys, I'm not sponsored by Gala Games or Superior. I reached out to these guys and bothered them and hassled them to come and chat with me. So it's just been an absolute honor chatting with you. And we'll look forward to playing more Superior in the future, seeing the development of the game, and, chatting to you again at a later stage in maybe 2023.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.